So, Anna, do you? Well, maybe I should start. I mean, I think many of you have already. You know the technical setup. We're being recorded, so keep that in mind. Also, like, I mean, just we're so few people, so if you want to say something, yeah, you can write in the chat, but you can also just blurt it out. I think that's fine. We wanted to just talk about a more human topic related to Corona, not the legal aspects. This is not at all about the legal aspects, but about human factors, because on some level, of course, lawyers are humans, although some people take issue with that. And we have feelings and emotions, and we are occasionally affected by our surroundings. And during the past 6 months, there have been rather, unprecedented events that, may or may not have taken a toll and affected how we work and how we feel. And I'll just give the word to Anna so you can continue with the introduction.
Well, thank you, Fredrik. So I indeed encourage everyone to participate. It's supposed to be really an interactive session where we all are supposed to share our views, experiences. And again, thank you so much for joining the session today. And there is a number of sessions at this conference that are purely legal, our favorite legal topics. But this time, Fredrik and I, given all the circumstances that have happened this year and certainly affected us, not only as arbitration practitioners, our activities as arbitration practitioners, our business, but as Fredrik said, as us as humans, our lives. And we thought it would be really good to talk about the human element of the COVID crisis circumstances. So one of the most significant game-changing things that resulted from this unprecedented event for most of us was switching from working in the office to working from home. And even though in some jurisdictions, things started getting back to normal with people returning to the office, it has prompted quite a few people to wonder whether there is something that should be implemented on a regular basis, whether there is a way to continue in the future. Is working from home really suitable for arbitration practitioners? Is it possible to efficiently perform our tasks that require a lot of focus, concentration, and brainstorming? Is it possible to do that all from home? Is it possible to work under pressure that our work sometimes require also from home? So is switching from home brings more benefits or downsides for working parents in particular? Is it something that we see our profession can develop and to what extent it's this real interaction with the team important in our practice? So as you see, and I can continue and go on, but there are really like a number of questions that we are sure not only us had in our minds before this session, but all of you do probably too. So the idea of this session is really to, as I said, make it as interactive as possible and to share our idea and thoughts regarding also the way forward. So we very much look forward to the lively discussion that hopefully will be enriching for all of us and from which we can take away some tips and ideas. So in order to start the discussion, to kick out our discussion, we thought it would be interesting to see what was experience of participants of this session with working from home. Hence, our opening poll question. And Fredrik, please.
Yeah, do you see it? Yeah.
It's in progress.
It's in progress, yeah. So far, people have either positive experiences or mixed emotions. It doesn't seem to be a catastrophe for anyone.
I cannot see this.
Yeah, I will summarize. I will, when it's done, I think you will see it, because right now we have 78% who have voted. So maybe we should leave it at that, and I'll end the polling. And I'm sharing the results now. Can you see?
So I have mixed emotions. But it's interesting that no one really voted for fully like a negative response. So I think overall it's mostly a positive experience.
But let's begin with you then, Anna.
Maybe let's begin with you, Fredrik.
No, let's begin with you. Let's begin with you. What's your take on it? I mean, I know you have 2 children and so forth. Have you been able to combine it all?
I must be honest, of course, and I can say that it has been quite difficult for me, especially at the very beginning, because indeed I have 2 small children, and there was really no childcare available at the beginning, so I had to adapt very quickly. And I also have a husband who is working full-time as a lawyer as well, so the job is also very demanding with lots of pressure. So it was indeed very difficult, but then somehow I adopted within the first month, so to say. I found someone to support me at home. We found like a nanny, and then my mom started to help. But overall, without any support, without any help, I personally think that it would have been very difficult, if not possible even to manage, to be honest. So yeah, it was not easy at all, but it worked out at the end of the day. And so I learned how to do it in an effective way, and I started finding even advantages of this setup.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have very similar experiences. We had my wife and I both work, and we have a young child, and we had a extremely difficult situation in the beginning where we both were working from home and we had no one to help. We were taking turns, but then we managed to kind of resolve that, and we kind of found a routine. But we were privileged and lucky enough to find someone that could help us. Of course, I know a lot of people that where parents were taking turns, basically are still taking turns. Working and kind of taking care of their children. I don't think I would have managed that for 6 months, to be honest. I think we were quite lucky that we found someone that could help us. But I think I also appreciate the positives, which is more family time, and getting a closer relationship with my son, and I think also getting an insight to what my wife is working with, because before I didn't really have a clue what she was doing, but now I've listened to a lot of phone calls she had. So that's been interesting. I think there's been a sharing of experiences, which is can be positive. So maybe on that note, we should invite some of our panelists to share some views on this particular issue. Have you managed, and if so, why, and what has been negative? Maybe Rupert, you want to start?
Sure. Well, like Anna, I've also got a couple of youngsters, two 5-year-olds. So it was a challenge to begin with. I think it very much depends, again, picking up on what Anna says, on the support network that you have, the family support network that you have. We were very lucky because we had at the time, and because of the lockdown, we ended up with 2 grandmothers living with us for pretty much the duration of the lockdown. And that made it so much easier for my wife and I, my wife also works, to get on with work during the course of the day. But 5-year-olds being 5-year-olds, they still want to play with mum and dad. during the course of the day, and it's very hard to turn around consistently and say, no, I'm busy. So you do need to make time for them. But it's, you know, there are benefits as well, because I think you're absolutely right, Fredrik, that it's also a precious time when you have an exposure to your children which you wouldn't normally have, and you've got to look at the positive side of that, the time to bond and to become involved in their lives in a way that otherwise we wouldn't have over the past few months. But we were lucky, and I think most people are not that lucky, and I think if you've just got two parents working with one or more children of a young age, it's going to be tough.
How have you, or anyone else in the audience, how have you kind of been able to, you know, put up barriers? Because as you can see on the slide, I mean, this is a common kind of comment on Corona working from home, that the distinction between home and work are just completely blurred. Does anyone on this call have any like good life hacks or advice on how you manage to kind of make sure that work is work and you know, private life kind of remains somehow?
Fredrik, yeah, can I say something about it, if you don't mind? Can you hear me?
Of course, go for it.
Cool. Yeah. So for me it was quite comfortable, yeah, because I have a separate room to use as an office at home, so no disturbance at all. But perhaps the most difficult problem was, I call it self-discipline. Yeah, so because when you're in office, in a real office, so you just have nothing to do except working. Yeah, so just working. And at home, you have many attractions, other attractions, and so it's really difficult, well, to follow the same route as in your office. And for me, well, a good solution was, so every morning I made a working plan for a whole day, like with breaks and what I'm going to do and how many hours and minutes, and like every couple of hours just to check if I follow this plan. And I went so far, so I even imposed the same approach to the whole office, because I'm a managing partner. So I asked every lawyer to send me his working plan or her working plan every morning, well, before 11 a.m. So I was not so strict, but before 11 a.m. so everybody had to send his or her working plan. And I didn't check if the plan was really done, but just when you have it in front of you, it really helps with your self-discipline. So that's.
Well, that's a very good tip, Maxime. And so do you see this continuing like this? So do you see your office being run, let's say, with employees, with lawyers working from home? Would you just go remotely?
Yes, well, because we opened the office, so now everybody is in those, because in Moscow it's possible now. But the rule is still the same, so everybody should send me his working plan. So I think it's quite a good idea. It was quite a good idea. So it survives even now when we all in the office. So I think the tip works for any kind of time and the situation.
I think Rupert wanted to comment here. Rupert.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on two other dynamics of working from home, and that is, it also depends a lot on your physical environment. So if you're living in a home with a nice office or a nice study, a big study, a comfortable working area, it's going to be that much more manageable. But if, for example, you're a junior lawyer, you're living in a flat, cramped conditions, it's not going to be so easy. So I can imagine that if you're in that situation, you'd probably welcome the opportunity to come back to work. The other dynamic I think that we need to be aware of as, say, more senior lawyers is the effect of working from home on our junior colleagues, because I think they're losing a lot in not being able to have that physical interaction with their senior colleagues, from which obviously they learn an awful lot on a day-to-day basis just by that physical presence. So I think that's an interesting issue also to perhaps discuss.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point you raise, and that's something in my firm that we have, you know, kind of prioritized. In Sweden, when we're opening the offices, the youngsters have priority, and for the very reason you mentioned, that, you know, they typically, you know, you have a very steep learning curve when you start in a firm, and, you know, that's possible because you have this interaction between youngsters and more seniors. And I think for that reason, allowing youngsters to return, even encouraging them to return to the extent it's, you know, safe and so forth, is quite important for law firms in getting that kind of explosive development that you typically get through this physical interaction. Do we have anyone else on the call who would like to add 5 cents on this issue?
If I may.
Go for it.
I'm a legal translator and interpreter, so in some way, part of my work, which is translation, has always been done from home. There is nothing new for me in the sense that I have to organize my day, be disciplined, and work a lot of hours solitary in the study. But the new dimension brought by the COVID lockdown, obviously, was the invention of virtual hearings. And I don't know if any of you, ladies and gentlemen, had participated in the virtual hearing between now and March. But this brought another dimension of difficulties in organizing home life around the hearing that lasts the whole day. So I'm also blessed with a study, which now I have to share with my husband, who also works from home. And the level of concentration and level of sound insulation required for 8 hours to participate in the virtual hearing is almost impossible to achieve at home. So I am now staring into a dilemma of actually building a sound insulated ISA compatible interpreting booth in my attic in order to carry on like that, unless something will happen. We move to some sort of hybrid scenario. I know that LCIA, for example, now has virtual hubs, or sorry, physical hubs where you can, at this point in time, still go and work, both the arbitrators and people of my guild, but God knows how long it's going to be available for if we're staring into a new lockdown. So it all remains to be seen. So the difficulty of handling long hearings from home, particularly if it's a different time zone, some of my clients are 6 hours ahead, presents a new level.
Thank you for your comments. How do you do, your husband and you? I mean, you're sharing one workspace where you kind of are a bit, you know, I guess you have peace and quiet. Do you make a schedule? Who can be there?
We try to accommodate each other with regards to, you know, he plans his meetings around my commitments, but so far I've only participated in one virtual hearing, and that was in July. Luckily, he wasn't particularly burdened with meetings, so he retired from the study for 3 days, but I don't think he'll be generous enough to carry on doing this. So I literally just bar from setting up an office in the garden with sound installation or in the attic. There he comes.
Very
there he comes.
Illustration of the whole situation.
Yeah, so the cognitive load when you interpret online is much higher than anywhere in the.
Why don't we just do a drop on the 1st of October?
There we are. Interruption. Yeah, the cognitive load is much higher, and it would be for the witnesses and the arbitrators equally. So it's a whole new domain that we're staring at the moment.
thank you for those comments, and also for the very clear illustration of the current problems working from home. I mean, I was thinking more, I mean, one thing I've noticed, and maybe you have too, especially in the beginning of the outbreak, is that this whole, terrible pandemic kind of united us all, and suddenly you were having much more deeper conversations with all kinds of people. I mean, it could be clients, it could be colleagues, or people you randomly, for whatever reason, you were having a telephone or video conference with. Compared to 6 months ago, that conversation was suddenly much more, well, you could say meaningful, but also more personal. And you were getting insights into how people actually have, things at home and, in their family life. Is that something many of you have noticed as well? I assume so. And if so, what kind of an impact do you think that will have on our business? Are we going to become closer people, better people, more considerate about family situations? Dimitri, you want to say something on that?
I was going to make a remark about the previous question, but yeah. On this topic, I think it's generally a positive. You see kind of a bit more insight into people and kind of their lives. I think that's generally a positive for colleagues, for clients, and obviously you don't want it in as much in formal settings like a virtual hearing. I think can kind of keep your pets and children restrained and insofar as possible during those formal moments. But other times, I think a lot of people have been having virtual get-togethers and so forth with colleagues, and I think that's necessary. I mean, and honestly, the biggest part of the office that I think people miss is the human interaction. I think you can create home offices if you have that luxury and get your sort of tech set up right, and potentially work from home for the long term, but you do lose a lot of the human interaction side of it, and I think everybody just has to work harder now to maintain that or to deepen it, and I think there are ways of doing it. Not personally, I find that it just takes more thought and planning.
I mean, just staying with you, since you work in a big international law firm, what kind of measures are you taking now to kind of train newly employed lawyers? I mean, in view of and kind of integrate them into your kind of corporate culture. How are you doing that under these circumstances?
It's hard. I mean, it's much easier to work with people you already know than to bring in new staff. We have essentially like a arbitration trainee or a clerk program, a stagiaire program, as they call it in some places. And so we have new arbitration, young arbitration lawyers coming through on doing, 3-6 month programs with us. And that is difficult because you have to integrate them, you have to give them work, you have to see what they're capable of, what they want to show, what they can do. So that takes a lot of planning, and I think we have different members of the team who are responsible for onboarding people, for keeping in touch with them regularly, for getting a sense, as Maxime was saying, what their workload is, what they're working on, making sure they give feedback, and making sure there's some opportunity for people to interact. But it's also provided a great advantage for us because oftentimes people can work from different time zones or different countries, and it doesn't really matter where they are. They don't have to be physically in London.
Do you think that even after, I mean, post-corona, that law firms or international law firms are going to become more tolerant about, you know, whether or not people work in the office, give people more flexibility?
I think if they're not, they will go the way of the dinosaurs, because there will be others who will be more nimble and adapt and figure out how to do things better.
I guess you can also look at that from a more, I mean, from a management point of view, that there may be some benefits with that in terms of people not having to live in expensive cities like London or New York, and there could be some, upside and also on that level. I mean, a win-win.
And office space is extremely expensive, and if you can use less of it more efficiently, you can offer better rates to clients and, just to be more efficient and save time on, commuting and, there are huge savings to be made, I think.
And did anyone notice that quality of, let's say, people with whom you work dropped, let's say, while they were working from home? Did it anyhow affect the work product?
I don't know if, I'm sure anybody could speak to this, but for my part, I haven't seen a difference in the work product. I've seen sort of the same level of work product. What has been more difficult is because you cannot check in on people, pop by their office, you don't know if they're, necessarily always working on what you ask them to work on right now, or if they're going to be, if they're having difficulty with something. So I think it's more the communication, and you don't exactly know when things are coming your way, or when somebody is not responding because they're, just on their lunch break, or if they're really unavailable for half a day or whatever. So I think those kinds of things are more difficult, but I haven't seen any change in the quality of the work.
Yeah, the same for me actually, and I can also, I didn't really see any difference. And in terms of seeing like who is doing what, it's not that we have now from, let's say, this schedules that, for example, Maxime was talking about, but honestly, even before the crisis, we could see each other's calendars and different meetings and appointments and deadlines that would be in these calendars. So it's actually was quite easy also, even like working remotely, follow who is working on what and who is doing what and what projects people are busy on. So from my perspective, I also did not really notice any negative consequences or any downsides from remote working.
But you had your mother taking care of your children.
Yes, I think so.
And I had a nanny taking care of my child during the working
Well,
days.
to be honest, my situation was not very easy from the beginning, because, as you know, I'm living in a country where I don't have family, and my husband also doesn't have family in this country. And so for us, it was very difficult from the beginning really to organize it. And, there were some travel restrictions as well imposed just to bring family together. But with the kids, I think, yes, you have to be, and going back to the parent topic, you have to be extremely organized. And what I did was also putting like a schedule every evening for the next day, what I have to do, what I have to achieve, what tasks I want to do. And I mean, that also meant for me, unfortunately, quite long hours, but that's, because I try to reserve time in the evenings between, let's say, 7, 9, 10 p.m. for the family. And then I would continue working afterwards. But to be honest, I did it also before. So that's why, from this perspective, I cannot say that much was changed.
Yeah, that kind of brings us to this next slide, which is
it's a famous one.
famous one from a famous meme from the Corona era, and I guess one theme or topic that has been which has been, addressed in media quite a lot in the last 6 months, is that coronavirus and home working, in particular, of course, when daycare and so forth, schools are closed in such jurisdictions, has been a setback for women in the workplace in particular. And the background to that being that men have done less at home when children have been forced to be homeschooled and things like that. I mean, do you want to start there? You don't have to share your personal experiences, but I mean, is that something maybe you've seen in your firm, or that some people who traditionally take more responsibility for children have had a tougher time, basically? Anja, you're muted.
Sorry.
You're on mute, which brings us to this slide, the growth of 2020.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think, to be honest, it really depends on every family's setup. And maybe to some extent working from home, it's just because historically maybe it happened like that. That's, I mean, more responsibility kind of with kids is with women. So, and then we have to combine work and kids somehow. And when you don't have any childcare, any support, and you work from home, that it makes it, of course, extremely difficult for you. But again, in my situation, we try to adapt to the new reality and make things really work. So I think that a human being can adapt to anything at the end of the day. So being put like in very difficult circumstances, situation, you find the ways, you find the solutions. And I think it's, can be easier or more difficult with regard to some specific issues. But at the end of the day, I think we manage. And by now I know, like from colleagues, also from friends, that, most of people really found the way to cope with family, with children, and work. So at the end of the day, I really think that's the matter of organization and having support. So, which is, of course, important. Sometimes it doesn't depend on us, but I think without these two elements, that's really hard to manage.
Yeah. And another aspect of this working from home part is, of course, I mean, marketing, which traditionally has been a lot centered on physical meetings, lunches in our business, lunches and dinners and conferences and so forth. And we are, of course, having an online conference here, which I guess in some sense is related to marketing. But how, I mean, maybe you, Dimitri, you want to say something about, how have you managed to kind of reach out to new potential clients in this era? I mean, not all clients want to have like video calls, or potential clients. Not everyone. It's not, it may be hard to reach people, so to speak. How has that changed your focus in terms of marketing?
Well, in a way, probably changed it less for me than for many others, because a lot of our clients have always been in other jurisdictions there we don't physically go to very often. So a lot of the business development, working on pitches and proposals and such, that all happens remotely anyway. Of course, there is something lost by not being able to travel and physically see a lot of clients over time. But I do think that in a way, clients can also participate more in submissions and hearings now that everything is done remotely or by video. And in a way, I think that, at least for existing clients, it's not a worse experience. For prospective, I mean, I think it is a challenge. I'm not sure I have any magic answers for getting new clients in this environment.
Yeah, I second what Dmitry just said, because yeah, for the existing relationship, from my perspective, again, this did not really affect much. For the new clients, it's really tricky, because how you do it? Do you just like randomly call people and invite them to have a video with you? Especially, you know, in some, for example, countries, in some jurisdictions, people are also reluctant just to, you know, go on phone, on video. They prefer at least initial personal contacts. And that's, of course, a challenge in terms of client development. But again, maybe over time, the perception, the mentality, the approach will change, and people will be more open to interaction by video and online, which I think is already happening. Because before that, what I've noticed before this whole Corona situation, very few people would go, like, let's say, on video calls. We would have conference calls. We would like just, you know, use, you know, dial-ins. But now people are more open to go on video, to show themselves, to show their homes. So it's really kind of became much more accepted. So I would assume that, you know, as we go, people would also become more open to initial contacts being also made by video, by phone, by other means, telecom means.
Yeah, it's a good point you raised, because video has been around for many years. At least I wasn't using it frequently prior to Corona. And I guess a couple of factors kind of interacted there. One was that suddenly there was an expectation to use video because, you know, there was no other way to see anyone really, right? And people also got used to that, and I guess the barriers were lowered in a sense as to what was kind of accepted in terms of, like, you know, how can you look, what kind of, you know, clothes would you wear, you know, how would the background look, and so forth. I mean, people kind of, I think there was an acceptance that and is that, you know, it doesn't need to be maybe as perfect as it used to be before, and that has made people more willing to kind of share in a sense. But just staying on that topic, I mean, one issue which is, you know, I mean, people are getting tired of video as well, right? I remember, at least in my case, in the beginning, you know, it was when I called in, I mean, there was an excitement about video, maybe, and seeing people. And maybe some people today are not so excited about it anymore, and they prefer to kind of, you know, speak traditionally without video. Is that something you've seen, that there's maybe a tendency, like a fatigue, a video fatigue?
You have a slide for that, Fredrik?
Huh?
You have a slide for that?
Well, let's see if I have a slide for that. I'm not sure. I don't think I have a slide.
Getting ready for the video, getting ready for the video, that one.
I don't have a slide for that. I mean, to be honest, but at least
I think we used to have one.
Yeah. Does anyone want to weigh in on that?
I think there's video fatigue, right?
Yeah, I think there's video fatigue right now, actually, to be honest. I think conferences are a manifestation of that. I mean, the online conferences, and there's a huge desire to meet in person.
I think it's, you know, it's very difficult in a video setup to have everybody interacting. And I think that's what you have in in-person conferences or coffee breaks. You have many groups of people and everybody talking in small groups, and everybody gets to talk and everybody gets to listen. And I think it's great that you're making this very interactive and making everybody panelists and participants in this setting, but it's still harder to do that in a video setting. You can't break up into groups of, you know, 2 or 3 and have a side conversation about something, or, you know, there's always somebody talking, and, you know, that means, you know, in our case, you know, 1 person talking, 16 people listening.
Yeah. Let me see. Where's is Anna? Anna, did you disappear? Think about technical issues. Oh, she's there.
No, I'm here.
Yeah, good. I thought you had disappeared. I mean, I feel also, I mean, it's a great point that you raised, Dimitri, that it's just the subtleties of human interaction and communication are to a certain extent lost by video, and you don't really get the full experience. And there's also a bigger risk for misunderstanding, to be honest, because the kind of complexity, the full complexity of human interaction and communication, part of it is just not there. I mean, I've had some, I would say, just speaking from my own experience, and some interesting client meetings over video where the likelihood of misunderstanding has been greater because of this particular format. If we would have met in person, things would have been, I think, more clearer and more capable of being explained. And I mean, all the technical issues related to this doesn't really help it in terms of bad sound and all that. We should say that this in 4 minutes, everything, this particular session would end automatically.
But maybe before we end, I think what's really interesting and important to really understand whether this is the way we can continue, whether we can continue only remotely, whether we should,
the poll. We have a poll.
Yeah, whether we should go back to the office, or what should we do? What would be the way forward, in particular for us, arbitration practitioners?
Precisely, we kind of have a poll regarding the future, and what's your preference here? It's completely anonymous.
Host
So
and
no one has to fear that they actually believe that they prefer not to ever set their foot in the office again. I think we have. I'll share the results. The results are not completely surprising that most people want to have flexibility. And I think that's a quite clear message to the law firms. And it can also be a challenge, because in law firms, you certainly have different views on that issue between different people. You have traditionalists that want to, sit down in a conference room and give comments orally, and maybe are not so familiar with IT. And others who for many years already have kind of worked in a manner which is kind of IT based and internet based. So I'm sure there are going to be a lot of interesting discussions in various law firms, in particular now, as when things are moving up, opening up and have been opening up, tensions between different kind of approaches to this issue. And I'm sure different law firms will take different paths.
Yeah. So from our discussion, what I've understood so far is that actually there are no really downsides, and no one really indicated any problems, except for maybe this social teamwork, maybe like personal interaction element. And if there is a balance that can be achieved, I don't know, maybe people having a meeting, physical meeting, a group meeting once per week, and people come to the office. So that's, of course, something that can be considered, but of course it's like for every firm, to find, I guess, this balance. But in any way, this life-changing event, I think, also changed mindsets of many people that, that's possible. It's possible to deliver a good quality work product. It's possible to stay in touch and to efficiently interact. But maybe, again, the social element, especially for the newcomers, is important. So how we maintain it. And that's the solution that everyone has to find for their own firms, I guess.